welcome to the 2 Point Conversion Podcast. I'm your host, Max. Now, we're back here for Spotify, the first episode of the year. Now, I know I haven't been active on Spotify, but that's because TikTok's been taking over. But we're back, we're active on Spotify, and we're ready to make a commitment to the Spotify podcast episodes. Now, if you're following on Twitch, you'll be watching the Battle of the Ocean for Magic Round, as today is our Magic Round review. We're going to talk about the mid-season review of certain clubs. We're going to talk about Magic Round, how it was because I went there. We're also going to talk about this Battle of the Ocean, which you will see on screen here at uh, on Twitch. Now, we're going to put the difficulty on amateur so that we can have a bit of fun, and we are going to make it 20-minute halves. But yeah, let's get into it and let's have some fun. Uh, I'm excited to be back and ready to roll on Spotify. So, as we wait for the game to load, I want to talk about this Battle of the Ocean. Now, they talk about this being the Battle of the Ocean, Battle of the Fish, the Battle of the Sea, whatever you want to call it. And that's purely because we got a shark and we got a dolphin. But there's some things that I question. Like we got the eels. Well, what happens with them? You know? And there's probably other clubs like that could fit into that description. Like I guess you could argue that the Sea Eagles could be there. They have the word sea in their name. But in terms of fish in the ocean, like sharks and dolphins, okay. But yeah, the main thing for me is the eels. So I don't get why the eels aren't part of the Battle of the Ocean. But anyway, that's my nice little rant as the Sharks and the Dolphins run out to Suncorp Stadium. Uh, Now, shout out to the Dolphins. They won this game in real life. They weren't expected to win, but they carry that Wayne Bennett mentality, and Wayne Bennett managed to get the boys to thump the Sharks and get over the line. Now, Magic Round as a whole was a pretty good event this time around. Like I went last year as well for the first time, and had a really good time. But this year I had a really good time as well. Like all the games were really exciting. Now I didn't see the Eels game because I did have to catch my flight home at 7 o'clock. But apart from that, we were there. We were enjoying the action. Just also point out that I am playing as the Dolphins in this Twitch game. Now, and I don't think the lineups are like the correct lineups. Like they got the right players in the squad, but I didn't bother with the lineups making them as they were for the game itself, if that makes sense. Um, this is a State of Origin final because I'm hyping it up for the Shield of the Battle of the Ocean. Um, so in game settings, it had to be State of Origin final. So they are playing for the Battle of the Ocean, and they will lift the Shield at the end of the game, whichever team is successful. Anyway, back to Magic Round. Yeah, Magic Round was great. Um, the Sharks were honestly really, really depressing, really flattening, really disappointing to watch as a fan. Like, don't get me wrong, I thought the game was going to be close. I didn't think it was going to be a huge Sharks victory like most people thought. With that Wayne Bennett factor, I thought, this will be a lot closer. It ended up being a flogging to the Dolphins, and shout out to Valence Tiwahare for a double on debut. Great first hit up, especially when he only took up rugby league a year ago. But yeah, as I said, the Sharks were really disappointing, and I don't know what it was. Nico Hines was trying to do his best, but unlike other weeks, it just wasn't coming off for him that night. And it's that thing when your playmakers aren't doing the job, you can't expect like him if he's not doing his job, you can't expect him to keep carrying. And I think that's where it went wrong for the Sharks. I think they were relying on Nico Hines to do the work, but for whatever reason it wasn't clicking for him in this game, and they didn't adapt to it. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's a good wake-up call for the Sharks, I think. But they'll bounce back. Like their form's pretty good at the moment. to argue where they're sitting on the ladder. Now, the Warriors were really good against Penrith, honestly. And Penrith, were shaky, but Penrith did get the job done. And you can say the refs took the Warriors out of the game, and you can say that they didn't, but credit to Penrith, man. They hung in there. They needed a win, and they got the job done. Really good game from the Warriors, though. I think they'll bounce back with a win this week against the Bulldogs, and I think the Warriors were really good. And even though they lost the game, like Sean Johnson played well, but I want to give a shout out to Josh Curran. Now he did score a try, but I feel like he was in this game in particular. He was doing a lot of work for the Warriors, and I think most of their attack, like Sean Johnson and Josh Curran, were the big point getters for the Warriors. Like they were doing the meters, they were making things happen. They didn't get a win, but you know, I think it's not all doom and gloom. I think the Warriors can go a long way in this competition. Now, what happened to the Sydney Roosters? That is a question on most people's mind. And to give you an answer, I don't know. Now, the rain did not help, and I personally don't think the Roosters have been a really good wet weather team. Not to say that they can't win in the rain, but the Cowboys, matched them, and they put it past them, actually. Beating them by a lot. And I think it really defines where the Roosters are at the moment. Like, they're still trying to work out halves. They're still trying to. I'm not saying the season's a write-off for the Roosters because, they'll get their origin players and toward the back end of the season, they will click gears. And I do see them still making the finals. But, yeah, it's hard to see where the Roosters are at because they're winning games, they're losing games, but they're not playing the best Roosters football, and I don't know what it is. Like the fact that they haven't settled on halves right now and they keep dropping and reselecting Sam Walker is an issue to me. And there was talk that they might bring Mitchell Pearce back, but I think they need to just, pick a half and stick it out. Like, don't get me wrong, Lachlan Ilias is great for the Rabbits. Um, but I don't think he's at his peak, and he's not the best half. I don't think he's the best half that the Rabbits had available. But in terms of getting halves from other clubs, like I think the Rabbits could have done better, but they've chosen to stick with Ilias, and it's paying off long term after in his second season in the league. Um, and just on that note, the Rabbits, they were really good. I was expecting it to be close. And I didn't see the Rabbits being so dominant against Melbourne, considering they've struggled against Melbourne a lot in recent years. But it just didn't click for the Storm, and Craig Bellamy knew that, and he's obviously turned things around for them to beat the Broncos last night pretty well. But yeah, the Rabbits are in a good form, and if with the Broncos loss, if the Rabbits win this week, they will be top of the ladder. And as the Bunnies fan, that makes me excited. Now, we're in good form at the moment, and I'm hoping we can carry this to deep into the premiership charge, deep into trying to win a premiership, get to that grand final. We've been knocking on the door for a premiership for a couple of years, but the Rabbits in this game in particular were really good, and I think they played some tactics that Melbourne weren't expecting. For example, that Cody Walker try, Latrell with the grubber from dummy half to send Cody Walker through. Like in that situation, and I reckon this is close to the try of Magic Round, but in this situation, the Storm were not expecting that at all. That's probably the last thing the Storm were expecting, and somehow Latrell and Cody combined to make a magical, pardon the pun, South Sydney try in this game. I also thought Tom Burgess had a really good game. Now, don't get me wrong, Tom Burgess has been a staple forward for the Bunnies attack over a good number of years, but I feel like Tom Burgess goes really under the radar. And I guess it didn't help when in 2014 and after that, George Burgess was probably the dominant out of the two, and then obviously you had Sam, who was, doing a lot of the work out of all three of them. But I think right now we're seeing the true potential that Tom Burgess had, especially this last couple of years. And I think he's, really underrated. Uh, he, I don't know what the haircut is he was spotting on the weekend, but yeah, he's trying to be Mark Nichols 2.0, and I don't hate it. But yeah, shout out to Tom Burgess, man. Now, the refereeing has been, questionable. And we've seen a lot of things, like for instance, last night's game, Xavier Coates scored a beautiful try that was called a knock on earlier in the play when the ball was passed straight into Justin Mullum's head. Now, those things happen, but and not everyone can be 100% accurate, but I feel like the bunker have the power to step in in all these certain situations, hence why we put them in there, but they didn't. Like last night would have been the perfect example for the bunker to step in and go, no, mate, you've got that wrong. It hit him in the head. They've played on everyone else thinking it's normal because they didn't hear the whistle. It's a good try, or the try. But no, they didn't, and it was called a knock on. Didn't really matter because Melbourne were going to win anyway, and it was basically full time at that point. But it would have been nice for the bunker to step in at that point. Now, the mid-season reviews for the clubs, it's I guess we're not really midway, but I guess we're at a good point now that we can kind of look at where clubs are at. And now the Broncos are in first, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they've had a bye yet. So for them to be in first right now, that's really good. But after what I saw last night against Melbourne, I don't think the Broncos are going to hold top spot for long. And now I'm expecting the Rabbits to win against the Tigers this weekend. So I think the Broncos will lose that top spot. But yeah, for right now, the Broncos are trotting away, and they are in a good position to continue that charge to playing finals football. Now, they did lose Adam Reynolds last night in a horrific uh, injury, which saw him lose feeling in his fingers and toes after he face planted the ground going for a try. So, all best to the speedy recovery for Adam Reynolds. Now, who knows how long he'll be out for, but I think with him being out, the Broncos might struggle a bit. Um, they may not. Again, they did all right last night when Adam Reynolds was gone. Ezra Mann was doing his thing. But the Broncos can't get complacent. They can't get people sent off, which they seemed to be doing last night, whether you agree with the calls or not. But the moment they got people sent off, they capitulated, they collapsed, they struggled, and Melbourne put on points. The Melbourne Storm. Speaking of the Broncos' opposition. Now, a lot of times last night they did things that were really good, and the commentators sat there going, yes, this is a great Melbourne Storm team. This is a team that we know is going to be there at the end of the season making a charge. And whilst, yes, they played good last night, I don't necessarily agree with that. This is the first time in a couple of seasons in a long while that we've seen Melbourne kind of struggle. Like, they get into games and you almost think, oh yeah, Melbourne's going to win. But this year it's been, oh, they've gotten to this game and it's, are they going to win? And like previously, I would have gone into a Melbourne Rabbits game and gone, oh yeah, like we're probably going to lose this game. But I was feeling really confident going into Magic Round against the Storm, and the Rabbits didn't do a thing wrong, and we got the job done. But Melbourne, it's like I don't know, they're playing certain games this year where they should win and they should win well, but they're not. They're struggling. I don't know. It's clicking, but at the same time, it's not clicking. And Craig Bellamy is a great coach. So, Melbourne will be there at the end, and I'm sure he will find a way to turn them around. But what's going to make that happen? I don't know. Now, moving on to the Canterbury Bulldogs, they aren't in the top eight at the moment, and they have had a fair few injuries. But I think they'll be right once they get their injuries back, and terrible injury to kick out, so that does hurt. But they're starting to get players back. Like Fox was named this week, he has been ruled out, but maybe next week or the week after he'll come back, and I think it's great. The Bulldogs start getting their injuries back. I think the Bulldogs will make a late season charge, and uh, they will finish around that 7th, 8th, 9th spot. I do genuinely believe they can make the 8 as well. One of the big things for me with the Bulldogs has been the work of Paul Alamotti. Now, not saying he's going to play every game, but the games he's been playing, he's been there. He's been doing his job. He's been a big driving force for the Dogs' attack, and yeah, great things to come for the Dogs in this one. Now, the Dogs, they're trying to work out the Kyle Flanagan situation, and if I were them, I would be sticking with Kyle Flanagan. Like, that might be a hot take, but I actually really like Flano. I think Flano is a great player, and given the opportunity at a good club, which I think the Dogs are, he could be special. Now, he's got to work into that relationship with his halves partner, and it's been tough that he's almost had a different halves partner all the time. But now we know Matt Burton's going to be there long term, that I think they could be the genuine halves for the Dogs. Now, I'm not expecting Josh Reynolds to re-sign. Like, I'm expecting him to probably retire after this year, or maybe sign on for one more season because he's not putting a foot wrong being that 14 role. But for long term's sake, like, I think Kyle Flanagan is the man for the Dogs. And you add Stephen Crichton to that next year and whoever else they sign, and I think the Dogs will be all right. I think 2 or 3 years, and I think the Dogs will be finishing that top five, top six spot, and that's not overrating. I genuinely think the Dogs 2 or 3 years can get top four, top six spot. Now, it's hard to argue what the Bunnies are doing at the moment, and I think a lot of teams, a lot of players are scared of what the Bunnies offer, and I hear a lot of people saying if you're in the comp now, the Bunnies are winning the competition. Now, we're sitting in second without a bye yet, which is really good for us. Um, and I think that's great, and I think it's good that people are worried about us winning the comp in terms of the other teams, but I don't want to put a label on it just yet. Like, the moment I think the Bunnies start getting carried away with, oh, we're first, oh, we're second, we're going to do good things, we're going to win the comp, I think they're going to, let the emotions get to them, and I just don't think they're going to get there. Now, I know you could say, oh, well, they haven't carried on, or they haven't said anything the last couple of years, and they get to the round before the grand final, or they get to that grand final and then they lose. And you're right, they don't. The last couple of years, they haven't really had this weight on their shoulder. Oh, we got to win the comp, and they have gone on to lose. But this year, I think is different, and I don't know why, but I like Penrith. No offense, but I don't think Penrith are as good as they have been the last couple of years. The Broncos are good, but I don't think they're as good as they were last year. And the Roosters in Melbourne, I don't think are good as they have been last year or prior years. But you know, there are teams that can challenge, and the Warriors are so much better than they have been. The Sharks are a lot better than they have been. They're probably on par with last year. And look, I could genuinely see a Rabbit Sharks grand final. But the last couple of weeks, the Sharks have probably made me doubt that. The Warriors are playing good, but I can't see them making the grand final. can see the Rabbits making the grand final. It's just a matter of who they they verse because I can't see that result right now. I can't see a team that I think the Rabbits could play. But, they're doing things right. They'll get a couple of Origin selections. Now, I will talk about my Origin team for New South Wales later, and I think Campbell Graham deserves his chance, but, that's not up for me. That's up for Brad Fittler to decide. Now, the thing that annoys me, we're going to talk Parramatta Eels here, and the thing that annoys me is people are saying the Eels aren't great this year purely because they've lost players like Mahoney and whoever else they've lost. Now, yes, the Eels started the season off with a bad losing streak, but for me, it wasn't the fact that they lost. Like, everyone's going, oh, the Eels are shit, oh, the Eels are washed, oh, the Eels aren't doing anything. Like, I disagree with that. The Eels were playing really good football, and they still are playing really good football. It's just when those games get close, they're losing the close ones. Now, the first close game they got over the line was against Penrith. They did the job, they did what they had to, and they got it done. But like when they played Melbourne and all these other teams, they were getting in close battles, but they weren't icing it, and they lost. Plain and simple, they lost. Now Gutho's doing his thing. I think the forwards are doing their thing. The Eels are clicking nicely, but yeah, I don't think it's a write-off for the Eels to make finals football this year. Like, I think the Eels are genuinely playing good football. I can't see them making the grand final. I can see them losing in the round before the grand final. But I think the Eels are being rid off by people, and I don't think they should be. I just wouldn't underestimate the Eels. Like, they're playing really consistent football at the moment, even if they are losing games. Now I know you've got to win games to make finals, but those wins will come, and I think the Eels are in good position. Now, the Battle of the Fish. We've talked about the Sharks. Now we're starting to talk about the Dolphins, and boy, oh boy, the Dolphins are the real deal. Now, you could say Wayne Bennett has that effect, and the Dolphins, I heard a lot of people say, they're average team still, it's just because Wayne Bennett's the coach. They're doing well. Say what you like, but you can't argue the Dolphins are winning games they shouldn't win. Like, Cronulla probably should have won by 12 or 18 points on the weekend, and the Dolphins come out and smash them. Like, the Dolphins should not have won against the Titans. The Titans up 26-0. The Dolphins come back. So whatever Wayne Bennett's doing and this team he's built is working. And you can't argue that. The Dolphins, I think I think a lot of people are waiting for this collapse of the Dolphins, but they keep surprising. They keep doing things that shouldn't be done, and I think the Dolphins will be in the top 8 come the end of the season. I don't think it'll be high top 8. I think it'll be 6 to 8 or potentially ninth and just missing out. But I do see the Dolphins playing finals football in their inaugural season. And I don't think many people could argue that. They're doing everything right. Now, one of those teams they beat that they shouldn't was the Canberra Raiders, and for me, the Raiders are playing good football and they're on a little win streak at the moment, but they're, I don't know, they're not it. Like, no disrespect to the Raiders because they're on a win streak at the moment, but Raiders, they're doing what they're meant to, but at the same time, they're not. Like, there's games they're just losing, and there's games they're losing, and there's games they're letting teams come back to just win. And at the end of the day, if the Raiders get enough wins to play finals football, credit to them. But I just don't, I just don't think it's the year of the Raiders. I'm sorry. And no offense, he's got a great rapport with the club, great rapport with the players, and they keep re-signing him. But the Raiders don't seem to be going anywhere. They seem to be in this stable spot every year, and it makes me question when is the time to move on from Ricky Stewart. Like, I'm excited that the Bunnies got Jack Whiten, but at the end of the day, Jack Whiten wants to win a comp. He should have won one with the Raiders in that grand final against the Roosters, but as we know, the Raiders did not win that game, and I think he knows he's got 4 years left in him, and a comp at the Raiders is just not going to happen. Hence why he signed for the Rabbits. And I genuinely agree. I don't see where the Raiders build from this. Now, if they don't re-sign Jared Croker, they'll have around a total of estimated 2.2 million to spend, and so it's you know up to the Raiders as to who they sign and what they bring into the club. But I don't see them doing anything. Like, they'll be there and they'll be good and they'll either make finals or they'll miss out on finals like they constantly do. But I just don't know where the Raiders build. Where, like, how do they win a comp? Especially they're losing Jack Whiten, who's arguably their best player, and there's not that many good people off contract at the end of this year that they could sign. Like, I think from memory, the best 5'8" available is Josh Reynolds, but we all know he's probably going to retire. But where, it's hard. The Raiders, yeah, I don't see the Raiders in the near future winning a competition, and it's hard for me to see where they get any better or how they get out of this stable rut. But that's not up to me. That's for the Raiders to work out. Now, the Tigers are looking to go 3 in a row against the South Sydney Rabbitohs this weekend. And I'm sorry, Tigers fans, but I think your win streak comes to an end. Congratulations on beating the Premiers. Like, that was phenomenal. I don't think anyone expected that, and actually, no one expected that, but you got the job done. But to me, what's this deal with the Tigers? Like, somehow they've got one of the best forward packs in the league, but somehow any player that signs for the Tigers genuinely becomes a worse player. And I don't know whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's the clubs, or whether it's the front office itself. But the best example I can give you for me is Tyrone Peachey. Absolute freak at Penrith. Had a couple of lean years at the Titans, but he was still one of their better players, in my opinion. And then he gets to the Tigers, and it's, look, you're really good, so we're going to make you captain, but it's not working out. You're not playing great, so we're going to stick you in reserve grade for most of the year. Like, to me, that's the Tigers. Like, when you sign Clemmer and you sign Papali'i, I was like, all right, they're choosing to stick with Luke Brooks, but this forward pack and Appy Coruscant, this forward pack, I think is going to help Luke Brooks grow, and I think the Tigers are going to be dominant. Like, I genuinely thought the Tigers would be better than wooden spooners that they were last year, but the forward pack is great, but it's just not doing anything. It's just that rut of we're here, we're forwards, we're playing for the Tigers, we're trying our best, but it's not coming off. And I don't know what this hoodoo is, but I don't know how the Tigers turn that around. And it's frustrating to watch as an NRL fan, and it's frustrating for Tigers fans to the point that they plan march outs. I think in one of the games this year, they actually planned to march out at the 12th minute to substitute or signify, sorry about that, the 12 years that they will miss out on finals football if they don't make finals football this year, and losing, what was it, their first 5 games before they got a bye. It's, yeah, it's unfortunate. And me in particular, as well as a lot of people, I didn't pick I don't think in my ladder review I had the Tigers finishing last. I generally don't think I did. But I did also say there is a chance that the Tigers only win 3 games, and that being their 3 buys. Now, that's also not going to happen because they've won 2 in a row and they've had the buys. So they've already got 3 wins with 2 buys left. So they're guaranteed to get a minimum of 5 now, which is great for Tigers fans. But I don't see a future for the Tigers. I'm not saying kick the Tigers out of league. I'm not saying that at all. But the Tigers don't utilise the Western Suburbs Magpies juniors very well. I really don't think they do because the Magpies seem to be winning the junior competitions, but they're not turning that into Tigers products. Now you can't keep everyone, but look at the likes of Teddy, Aaron Woods, Addo Carr, Moses, like the players they've let go. If they could have found a way to hold on to them, they probably do win a comp by now. But that ship has sailed, and the Tigers are just left with what looks like to me reserve grade teams every week. And right now, like player managers are telling people not to go to the Tigers as we're half time in the game and the Dolphins are up 36-6. We had a great start. Let's see if Cronulla can do a comeback. But yeah, the Tigers player managers telling people don't sign for the Tigers. The Tigers are trying to do the whole Raiders thing and sign people from England, but I just I don't know what it is with the Tigers. People that go there, just putting it nicely, but people that go to the Tigers start sucking, and I don't know what it is and how the Tigers get around that. But you know, is what it is. Now let's take a look at my Origin team for New South Wales for Game 1. Now, I will talk about some selections I made because, there is some controversy with some of them. Now, I have picked James Tedesco at fullback, and that's great. He's our captain, and I don't think Freddie's not gonna. Oh, and I don't think Freddie's not gonna pick him. Uh, but I would argue that Dylan Edwards has been the form fullback in this competition. I think he deserves the shot. And people have a go at me and like, you can't pick Edwards. Teddy's there. Teddy's first choice every day of the week. And yes, I agree. Teddy's the captain. Teddy's first choice. And yes, Teddy performs in Origin. But I think you should have to earn that spot every year in Clubland. I know Queensland do this loyalty thing until they retire or until they're at the end of their time, then they replace them. But I think you still need to earn that. And I genuinely don't think James Tedesco has earned the right to be the New South Wales fullback this year. I think Dylan Edwards has been far superior, and I think he should be wearing the number one jersey for the Blues, which is why in my predicted lineup, I named him at 18th man because we all know Teddy's going to get picked. Now, the rest of the team, we've got Brian To'o, Stephen Crichton, Latrell Mitchell, Campbell Graham, Nico Hines, Payne Haas, Damien Cook, Jake Travojevic, Junior Paulo, Cam Murray, Isaiah Yeo, Api Coruscant, Hamueli Olakau'atu, Josh Curran, Hudson Young, and Dylan Edwards. Now, I think Hudson Young deserves a call up. He's been phenomenal for the Raiders this year, as well as Josh Curran. He has been one of the shining lights for the Warriors and one of the reasons why they're doing so well. Now, we do have some injuries, so I think these players are likely to get selected. And Hamueli Olakau'atu, I didn't think he was going to get picked, but because we've had all these injuries, I definitely think he's a fair shout now. And I think Brad will be looking at him, especially this week. Now, Junior Paulo, he's been playing well for the Eels, but people question should he be starting, and I think he's got enough in the tank to start this year, enough in the tank just to get him by. Then you bring on one of the three bench players, and I think he's going to get the job done. He always does for New South Wales. Now, one person did question, or one or two people did question, Damien Cook, really? Appy Coruscant's better. We know Appy's better. And yes, in the past couple of years, Appy has been better, but this year I think Cook's developed his game a little more to try and step across people because people up until now, or up until recently, couldn't read his game, and then the rules changed, and people worked out what Damien Cook was going to do, so they worked out how to read him, and so he's had to go and develop some more. He's had to go and develop his game some more, and I think he's done that now. Not so that people can't read him, because people are definitely reading him, but I think he's better than what he has been the last couple of years, and I think he deserves to start for New South Wales this season. Now, the Nathan Cleary, Nico Hines half combination, that was touch and go. Like, you're not going to take Cleary out of the side, just like you're not going to take Teddy out of the side. But just like Dylan Edwards, I think Nico Hines deserves to be in the lineup. I think Nico Hines has been the better halfback, and he did win the Dally M medal last year. So, I think at this point in time, he's been better than Cleary, but I'm not going to take Cleary out. So, of course, Nico Hines has to be the other half and 5'8", and Nico Hines is happy to do that. He has come out and said multiple times, I don't care where I play, I just want to represent New South Wales. I want to get the job done for the boys. Now, I think Nico Hines needs to start. I think Nico Hines playing 18th man is a slap in the face to the Dally M medalist. But, alas, we are here, and I think whilst Burton has been a great 5'8" for the Dogs this year, and whilst Cody Walker's been killing it for the Bunnies, I think um, Nico Hines deserves that shot. There was talks of, and Cleary's backed Luai to make the squad, and don't get me wrong, connections are everything, and it's great to have the Cleary Luai connection, but Luai's not playing his best form, and they've won one competition in 4 or 5 years, or two competitions in 4 or 5 years. So I think at some point it's like not working anymore, or Queensland had just adapted to it, know how to read it, and I think for the most part, Brad Fittler needs to think that it's time to move on. Maybe if you really want Luai in the team, you make him the 18th man, or you make him the 14th man and not have Appy. But yeah, I think I'm not saying Luai's time in a Blues jersey is done, but I think for right now, I think it's time to move on for that Cleary Luai combination. But yeah, I don't know. That's my Origin team. The only other thing I want to point out is I have gone Campbell Graham on the wing. Now there is a chance Josh Adokar is back and fit in time for Origin, but even if he is fit, he would have only played one game for the Dogs after coming back from injury. And Campbell Graham, I know he's probably wasted on the wing, but he did play on the wings for the Kangaroos at the World Cup last year, and he's been killing the house for Australia, not for Australia, for South Sydney. And I think Campbell Graham really deserves his shot this year. I wouldn't be mad if he wasn't selected. Uh, and as a Bunnies fan, if he's not selected, that's only good for the Rabbits because it makes us stronger during that Origin period. We do have one bye during that period, so that's great for the Bunnies. But if he is selected, I think it only bolsters New South Wales, and I think both teams are going to be pretty well matched this year, and I think picking someone like Campbell Graham differentiates between the Blues and the Maroons, and I think having someone like Campbell Graham is a big step into trying to help New South Wales win this competition, win State of Origin this year. The only other selection, I didn't make the selection, but I could argue having someone like Alex Johnson in the team, like as I said, I didn't pick him, but I think New South Wales have lacked, To'o has that on one side, but the other side, New South Wales for a couple of years have lacked that genuine finisher, and as we've seen over the past 3 years, including this season for the Rabbits, Alex Johnson can get the ball 10 metres out, and even 15 metres out, and he genuinely scores the try. He knows how to finish, and that's why the past 2 or 3 years he's been the top try scorer. And you know, he could be one of those players that are really good, but like Jared Croker, but just unfortunate, never gets the Origin selection. And I'm okay with that as well. But if New South Wales want a genuine selection, I think or the genuine finisher, sorry, not the genuine selection. I think Alex Johnson would be that player. But at the end of the day, that's up to Brad Fittler. I can only speculate on what I think the team's going to be. Now, we are currently 54 minutes gone in the game, and we are up 43 to 12. So just like real life, the Sharks aren't playing great footy. I thought we knocked that on then, but okay, we're gonna get tackled. Uh, we are getting to the end of this game, but the NRL right now I think it's in a good position. I don't think views wise and fans to the games, it's as great as AFL. Like, don't get me wrong, I watch the every occasional AFL game and up the Magpies. But I think, people always have this conversation, oh, NRL is better than AFL. But I'm going to be honest, rugby league is one of the greatest games of all, and I know that's their slogan. Don't get me wrong, I love rugby league to bits, but right now, I think views and everything. I think Magic Round leaves Gather Round for dead, but right now, and I think based on numbers and across the whole of Australia, I think AFL is actually, I genuinely think AFL is Australia's sport as opposed to NRL. Don't get me wrong, cricket's better than both of those, and it's Australia's national sport for a reason. But rugby union, I think, is there. And then I think it's NRL and then AFL. I genuinely think AFL is more watched, and I genuinely think AFL right now is in a better spot than the league. But I am a rugby league man, so we're here to talk rugby league. And shout out to the Matildas. They've got a couple of matches coming up in their warm-ups for the Soccer World Cup. Now, please, the world is trying to grow women's sports. So if you want to, if you can get out to the Soccer World Cup, it's unlikely that the Australian men and the New Zealand men will ever host a Soccer World Cup, but they've given one to the women because, there's not that many teams involved as opposed to the men. But I think, yeah, Matildas are in a good situation to win the comp, win the World Cup. So if you can get tickets, get out and support the girls on their charge to World Cup glory. Now, back to the mid-season reviews after that little Origin and other sports rant. Sorry. We're gonna talk about the Titans, and the Titans are a tricky team. Honestly, we we win some, we see the Titans win some, and we see the Titans lose some, and they're playing the Knights this week, which I think they will win. But just like the Dolphins, they're winning games they shouldn't. Like on paper, Manly should have absolutely beat the Titans last week, but I called it all week. I said, nah, Titans are going to cause an upset, and they caused an upset well and truly. Now, Aaron Shop uh, has had his moments for the Titans this year. I think he was a good buy for the Titans. Kieran Foran, I think, was also a good buy for the Titans. I don't know how long he's going to be at that club for because of his age, but I think he was a good buy. I think Tino's doing his thing still. I, it's hard to argue. Tino's one of the best in the game at the moment. I think Tino's great, and he will definitely be in that Maroon side. But what is wrong with David Fifita? I don't know. David Fifita is great, but he just hasn't been what he has been the past couple of seasons, and I don't know how he gets back to that. Don't know if it's a mental thing, but that's, up to Justin Holbrook. But Tanner Boyd is someone I'm actually grown to liking. I wasn't a big fan of his to start off with, but I think he's been one of the standouts for the Titans this year. I think he's been great. Honestly, his work on and off the ball, there are better, but within the league. But for the Titans, I think he gets the job done. I think he does what the Titans need. And I honestly, there are better in the league, and you probably could upgrade. But for what the Titans are trying to do, I keep him with Tanner Boyd. I think Tanner Boyd's the man. Now, onto the Roosters. Now, the Roosters, they're in a rut, and I did speak about them a little bit. Don't know where they go from here, how they make finals football. Um, and we saw in Magic Round they got pumped by the Cows. But I've said it when he signed, and I'm saying it now. Brandon Smith has been good in patches, but I don't think he's been the player that the Roosters thought they were buying. Honestly, I don't think. I think he's still probably the best hooker New Zealand have. So if New Zealand have any test matches at the end of the year, he will get selected for them. But I don't think we're seeing the Melbourne Storm hooker that the Roosters thought they were buying. And that's unfortunate for them. As a Rabbits fan, I love to see the Roosters struggle, and they probably love to see us struggle as well. But I, yeah, I don't think Brandon Smith's great normally, but this year I just don't think he's been the Storm hooker that the Roosters thought they were buying. But shout out to Angus Crichton. He come back from head injuries and other injuries he had going on in his life. And I thought for his first game back, he was quite decent in Magic Round on the weekend. But for me, the standout for the Roosters, I think, has been Joey Manu. I don't like Joey Manu playing at 5'8". I honestly don't think it works. Now, I forget who it was, but one of the media personnel come out and said the other day that the Roosters will go well this year, but they're not going to win a comp. And they only seem to win comps when they have that solid 5'8", whether it's homegrown or whether it's a premiership player that has won premierships at other clubs. Like, for example, Cooper Cronk, when he came, they won, what was it, 2 comps back to back. And he even went as far to say they get Nathan Cleary or a player like Nathan Cleary, they get back Latrell or a player like Latrell, and they'll win a comp. And I agree with that, but I also think that Joey Manu, whilst he's having a good year, right now he's not a 5'8". I'm sorry, Roosters, but I think you want that Latrell type player in the centres. You got to go with Joey Manu in the centres. I think he's a gun centre, and he's not as good as Latrell, but he is that Latrell type player. And I think for what you want, find a 5'8" or find a halfback elsewhere that can be that Cleary type player, because Cleary's not leaving Penrith. But you know that Latrell type centre you're after is Joey Manu. You might call me crazy, and Trent Robinson might call me crazy because he's playing him at 5'8" right now, but Joey Manu, I think, is that Latrell type centre that they're after. Um, but the Roosters, they're trying to play Roosters football at the moment, and I think that's working for them, but they need to find another aspect of their game. They need to develop something new in order to get back into this comp. They need to develop something that other players aren't expecting, and I don't know. Matt, I'm not saying Trent Robinson's time is up, because obviously he's had good players and he's won multiple premierships at the Roosters. But I think if Trent Robinson doesn't find something that works this year and fails again next year, I think there's genuine concerns and questions over whether he should keep his job. I genuinely think that. But, that's for the Roosters board to decide. And the Roosters will plot away being the Roosters. Now, the Warriors, or the Wars, as some refer to them as, they're in the hunt this year. They'll play finals football. They're good. It's not just a dream. The Warriors will be there, as we've reached the 70-minute mark on Twitch in game. The Warriors will be there. Josh Curran doing his thing. Sean Johnson doing his thing. Now, I don't know whether the Warriors will go far, and I don't think the Warriors will finish top 4, but they will definitely play finals football. They're, it's an interesting one. It's almost as if the Cows and the Wars have swapped positions, swapped play styles. I know the Warriors got new coaching, but the Warriors were terrible last year. Cows were high flying, and now the Warriors are high flying and the Cows are terrible. But, you know, yeah. And the Warriors have announced that they're bringing back Roger Tuivasa-Sheck next season, but I don't know where you play him. Like he's great, he's a great player to have, but where do you play him? Like the centers and the wingers are doing well for the Warriors right now, so I wouldn't be touching them. Oh, too big of a kick there. Yeah, I wouldn't be touching them, but there's talk that they want to bring him back into the centers or the wing. Now, I know he's a fullback and things haven't quite worked out at rugby, but I'm sorry, I'm not moving CNK out of that fullback position. I think he's been doing a good job for the Warriors this year. You could potentially play him 5'8" as well, but Tamari Martin's doing a good job, and I don't think you want to tamper with that. Not to mention they have Dylan Walker that can fill that void when Tamari Martin is out. But, I think it's exciting things to come from the Warriors. I genuinely think the Warriors have a good chance in a couple of years of doing something special, especially once they add Roger back to that lineup. But yeah, Warriors fans get excited. Now, I know I referred to them as the Wars a couple of seconds ago, but I don't like it, man. People say come on the Wars, people say up the Wars, but where's this H come from in Wars? Like, what is it? Anytime someone talks about the quote unquote Wars, I always think they're talking about the Waratahs in Super Rugby. Like, I genuinely think that. Like, I don't hate it. Like, if they want to call them the Wars, so be it. But for me, and I've used it plenty of times because that's what they get called now. But for me, anytime I hear it, I still genuinely think of the Waratahs. But anyway, that is what it is. Now, I know I haven't done a review on every club, but the last two teams I want to focus on here are the Cowboys and the Sea Eagles. Now, the Cowboys, I don't know what's happened to them, man. Like, I'd argue they probably should have been in the grand final last year, but they missed out, and people were expecting them to go on and do great things again this year, maybe even potentially win the comp. But I think they just had a good draw last year and a stroke of luck in playing consistent footy, if you can even call that a stroke of luck. But for whatever reason, their style of play and their games are just not working this year. And I don't know, man. Todd Payton's got something to work on. But you know, it's you got to tinker with it. Um, and the tinkering worked last year. It's not working this year, but I believe the Cowboys will be back next year. Like, you got to tinker with it, and something hasn't gone right this year with the tinkering process, but it'll all fix itself up. Now, they had a good win against the Roosters on the weekend, and maybe this was the tinkering and the fix that the Cowboys needed, and maybe they'll go on a run. I don't think the season is over yet for the Cowboys, but I think something needs to change soon, or they could find themselves in a wooden spoon battle. Um, and Manly, just to finish off in this 76th minute moment of the game that we're in, Manly, I've got a lot of high hopes for Manly every year because they've got the team to do it. They've got great players, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't happen. Now, Tom Travojevic is a phenomenal player, but I don't get it. There's no I in team, there's no one man team thing when it comes to rugby league. But for whatever reason, Manly can't win if Tom Travojevic isn't in their team. Like, sure, they have won games without him, but Manly just struggle without Tom, and I don't know what it is. I don't know why. I don't know why they struggle. I don't know how they fix that. But Manly, well, for the most part of the first half of the year, most part, Manly were on top of the ladder. Manly were second, Manly were first, then Broncos came back over and have been first ever since. But Manly, for most period of this season, have been second on the ladder, and I think they've had one bye. But whilst they're not playing good football, they are getting the job done, and that's why they've been second for most time on the ladder this year. But it's an interesting one because whilst Manly always look like they're great, they never seem to do anything. Like, Manly are great and they can get to that top four spot or top five spot, but then they get to the finals and they just meh. They're just ugly to watch. Or Manly look like they're playing great footy, but then somehow they just miss out on the finals. Like that happened a couple of years ago. Manly were looking great, and I thought, oh, they're a genuine shot here. But then out of nowhere, they finished ninth or 10th and didn't even make the finals. So, every game is never a certainty for Manly. It's what Manly am I going to get? What Manly can I get myself into? And we've hit the 50 point mark, 50 points to 18 with a minute to go in this game. But yeah, it's what can I get myself to as a Manly player? We sign players, we sign a new coach, and the players and the coaches, they come and everything gels, but we're just we're not getting that spark that is previously Manly, and we're not getting that surge. We want to get back to, when we had DCE at first, or when we had Matt Orford and we were making the finals, we were winning comps, we were doing whatever. But, for Manly to get back to that point, they need to be playing consistent footy. And whilst he was good at South because of the players he had, wasn't great at the Broncos as a coach, I think Anthony Seibold is probably a good shot at doing something with Manly. I genuinely think he had a rough period of time at the Broncos, and I think he's got the players and the right technique to do it at Manly. He's just got to play that consistent footy. And if Manly can play consistent footy, I think they will get the job done and they will win more than they should. But, it is what it is. But for the first Spotify episode of the season, mid-season review, the New South Wales Origin lineup. By the way, next episode I will talk about my Queensland lineup and the Magic Round review. I think all positive here, and I'm just excited to be back working on Spotify. Um, yeah, I hope you liked the episode. But this has been the 2 point conversion, and I'll see you later. 2 point out.